Hello, and welcome to my channel. I usually do variety content, but this video has been on the back burner for far too long. Anyways, a very long time ago, I released a video on my favorite concept album, Jeff Lynne's War of the Worlds. It was my longest scripted video to date, and during it, I described how I came across Jeff Lynne's album while listening to Electric Light Orchestra. And as such, I confused Jeff Lynne for Jeff Lynne. Well now, it's time to dust the latter off the shelf and break down my second favorite concept album, Time by Electric Light Orchestra. Keep in mind that this review is coming from someone with almost no knowledge of music theory or terminology, so this will be a very surface level analysis. The story for this concept album is that of our unnamed protagonist, who lives a happy life with his girlfriend/significant other in the year of our Lord, 1981. However, a time travel experiment from the future rips him away from the world he knew, straight into the new year 2095. Once there, he tries to cope with his new environment, but can't get his mind off the girl he was separated from back home. His perilous journey into the unknown begins with the first track on the album. Twilight is not only the first song on the album, but it's also the first one from the album I had ever heard of. Let's ignore the fact that I found it through a certain virtual divegrass tournament and jump straight into the song itself. The album's prologue starts with a spaced-out intro melody below a robotic voiceover with a cryptic message about sending a message through time. It feels as though you're floating in a void, until you're pulled into the wormhole that is the song proper, Twilight. Hard percussion and synthesizers give way to the pure 80s feel of the album, as Jeff Lynne's vocals describe our protagonist being swept away into the far future of 2095. He describes his time travel as if it were a dream, speaking to time as if it were an angel. Twilight is by far my favorite track on the album. This song's always a headbanger for me. The iconic layered harmony to Lynne's vocals, as well as the subtle strings behind the booming percussion, make this a song I can jump into again and again. This letter to the past is closed off with an intriguing departing message of the synths are cranked up all the way for this banger. Yours truly 2095 is literally the most robotic sounding of the songs on the album, and for a good reason. After exploring the fascinating future world our protagonist finds himself in, his continued sadness over his missing love has brought him into contact with a robotic reproduction of his girlfriend that society believes will cure all his woes. State-mandated girlfriends, huh? I guess the weebs are happy. Thankfully, our hero somehow manages to avoid the horny stick long enough to keep his sanity intact. He takes his mind off things by purchasing himself a The album slows down into Ticket to the Moon with a calm piano intro, leading straight into vocals describing our protagonist glancing away from the wonder around him and lamenting the loss of his true partner. Steady percussion backs the more limited synths in each chorus as more vocal harmonies fly by, while our hero shoots through the stars. He somberly wonders if this long journey of his is a one-way trip. This track is much less chaotic than the first two, but provides some breathing room for slower reflection in the narrative. After some time to ponder his predicament, our hero asks himself a new question about whether this truly is
the way life's meant to be.
Synthetic strings and bass introduce The Way Life's Meant to Be, as the protagonist realizes he's only been in the future for a day. He walks the old streets of where he used to live and sees the scars that the tsunami of change has left on them. He asks himself if all the new technology and the growing hole in his heart are just things he should accept and move on with, or if it's too late to ever see his lover again, as the bells chime. The unique strumming and varied instrument choice are the song's strong points for me, underneath the more simplistic vocals. Note that this is about where the bonus track, Julie Don't Live Here, would be on the album. This bonus track shares many of the instruments and bells of The Way Life's Meant to Be, and its narrative is even more confirmation of our hero visiting his lover's old house and dashing the forlorn hope that she is not there. It was cut for being too redundant and similar to the previous song, but that certainly doesn't detract from its emotional payload. Unfortunately, I can't think of a decent transition into the title of the next song. Another Heart Breaks is the most vocally sparse track on the album, its only words consisting of Another Heart Breaks and counting to the number 8. Ah, ah, ah. While that isn't a bad thing in itself, this is still the weakest track on the album for me. The instrument choice is alright, alongside some decent distortion effects, but it's not interesting enough to stick in my mind compared to other tracks on the album. However, the narrative implications of the song are fairly generous to its credit, and my interpretation of this is that this is the moment our hero finally realizes that he will never be with his love again, and he embraces his sorrows. Our hero then lifts his head to the window as he realizes that Rain is Falling begins with a few quiet lines from a certain famous rain-themed nursery rhyme. This is soon replaced by the slow, rhythmic pounding of piano chords, backing more synths as our hero still can't help but reminisce about his old life. In the meantime, all the technology in this new world can't stop the rain from falling on the city streets. However, the narrative here gives the biggest overt hint about the story, with the lines, "With their brand new time transporter, they think maybe I fought to get away. But with all their great inventions and all their good intentions, here I stay." This implies that the protagonist was involved in a time travel experiment against his will, or without warning. And despite the scientists thinking that the wonders of the future would make his life better, only now do they realize that they broke him more than they could ever understand.
Oh dear!
I could make an analogy to his teardrops matching the falling rain, but I think you get the point. It's another slower track on the album, but I think it gets its message across better than Another Heart Breaks. Our hero then decides to try in vain to send his lost lover a message.
Last night from the end of the world.
I know I'm kinda dating this video by saying this, but From the End of the World is by far the most schmoovin' track on the album for me. Jeff Lynne's long, gliding vocals fly above a backing beat that I can't stop my head from bobbing to on every listen. I can only describe this track as pure 80s noir. The vocal harmonies are subtle and used sparingly, which helps the track as the band has some fun with the synths. Narratively, our hero is utterly desperate for some sort of resolution, nearly begging for some sort of sign from him to somehow cut through time and space itself to reach his lover in her dreams. Does it get through? The world may never know. But since his calls yet go unanswered, our protagonist's facade begins to show cracks when
The lights go down!
it looks like our hero's morals are a bit compromised when the lights go down. Here, he seems to have caved and gotten frisky with that android girlfriend from yours truly 2095. Seems the horny finally caught up to him, and he tries to justify his actions to himself by saying, "Still need you, baby," over and over as he lays with his mechanical mistress. He rationalizes that it doesn't matter since she will never see his moment of weakness. Musically, the simple vocals have enough sweet harmony to keep it a bit interesting, even if it's a slower track. It isn't my favorite, and the instrumental is about average compared to other tracks, but I won't skip it like I usually do to Another Heart Breaks.
Breaking news!
We have to interrupt this broadcast to introduce the next track.
Here's the news.
Here is the next track, coming to you with a bouncing rhythm similar to From the End of the World. The narrative structure of Here is the News is a reading of various headlines one would hear in the year 2095. Many of these recordings are layered on top of each other during the moments the more lyrical headlines rest. They last just long enough to hear a few words of each, nearly overwhelming you with random information. Coincidentally, this happens to also be the same state of mind our protagonist is in. Having nearly given up his hope of returning, he may turn to the news to see if there are any new developments in the technology that brought him here. His frustration boils over in his voice, briefly cutting above the constant stream of news to yell the desperate lines, "I want to go home. I want my baby back."
I wanna go back!
This powerful line even slows down the whole song for its delivery before it picks up again, the hero drowned out by the flow of life around him. Another thing to point out is that one of the headlines mentions someone breaking out of a space station called Satellite 2. which our hero mentions departing from in the song Ticket to the Moon. Maybe he was the one who broke out, but it could be a coincidence. Aside from the story, I enjoy the steady percussion of the song, alongside the sheer number of lines they had to record for all the various headlines. There were even a few headlines I couldn't make out properly until I finally looked up the full lyrics a year after my first listen. That tangent aside, the next song explains that circumstances seem pretty meek for our... No, wrong song. That's a dumb joke. Show the real title card. That's better. I'm gonna be honest with you, I kind of forgot this song existed until I started this script, since I hadn't listened to the full album front to back for a while. I wish I listened to 21st Century Man more often, as the instrumentation in the second half of the song is better than I remembered it, especially the synth choice. It's a slower ballad that reflects on our hero's journey in the second-person perspective. The lyrics tell how our protagonist can go nearly anywhere and do nearly anything in the fantastic world of 2095, but it seems nothing can fix his sorrows. It remarks that the regular people around him don't understand why he's so lonely, even when the tech and robots have solved their own problems. However, there may be some salvation, as it's implied that our hero's prayers may have been answered, and he is returning to his own timeline, so he can kiss the ground he walks upon, as the lyric says. However, this isn't strong evidence, and he may still be stuck in the future. Either way, lessons he has learned help transition to the next track.
Hold on tight to your dream.
Hold On Tight begins with a transition similar to what we heard in the prologue, as if the supernatural void of whatever technology brought him to the future is now flying him back. We then get to the final major song of the album, which is the lead single, and usually the most remembered track from the album. For some reason, it was also the most expensive music video ever made for a single at that time, even if the video has very little to do with the album's storyline. Nonetheless, it's an upbeat, feel-good rock and roll track that even has a verse in French. I don't have too much else to say for it, as this is the track that was most designed to be listened to outside of the album's established structure. For narrative closure, we're going to have to head on over to the... Stopping at the album's epilogue, its transition is reminiscent of a church organ to me for some reason. The song has a descending feeling to it, as it winds down the narrative by reprising some of the lyrics of 21st Century Man. It isn't entirely clear if our protagonist returned home or not, but the album's moral is given to us by reminding us that time is fleeting, and even if you have the chance to skip ahead or back in time, it may not fix the problems you face. You should cherish the moments you have, and focus on improving your future rather than dwelling on the past. While it isn't the most complicated of lessons, this album still holds a good place in my heart, since it was the first full concept album I had ever listened to, and it remains my favorite ELO album to this day. What started with me only listening to Twilight and Yours Truly 2095 changed as I kept warming up to more and more of the album's tracks on each listen through. And without this album, I never would have found out about Jeff Lynne's War of the Worlds in my recommended feed, so I thank it for that. And that was every track on the album. To round out this review, I'm going to rank each track in the album by my own personal preference of which songs I listen to the most, excluding the prologue and the epilogue. In last place, with number 11, is Another Heart Breaks. 10th place is 21st Century Man. 9th place is Rain is Falling. 8th place is The Lights Go Down. 7th place is Hold On Tight. 6th place is Ticket to the Moon. 5th place is The Way Life's Meant to Be. 4th place is Yours Truly 2095. 3rd place is Here Is the News. 2nd place is From the End of the World. And to round it out, number 1 is Twilight. I just can't get over that bombastic intro to the album. Actually, when I think of it, if I look at the top 3, I really do like the more schmoovin' bombastic tracks, which are Here Is the News, From the End of the World, and Twilight. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I do have a few other album reviews linked here, and I'm hoping to do more in the future. But then again, this is just a passion project of mine. I have a lot of other different variety content on the channel, and if you like the video, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you again for watching.